Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I'm so excited that it's time for another shelf spotlight. A couple weeks ago in one of my live reading sprints, I asked for ideas for a shelf spotlight for May, and someone reminded me that it's AAPI Month, or Asian American Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. And I'm so excited because I love reading from all around the world, but in particular, this part of the world. For some reason, I have so many books to share with you today. I have 12 books that I have already read and 13 books that I have not yet read. So we have quite a bit on my shelves that are from this part of the world. And I'm sure if I did a deeper look into some of the books I'm not really that familiar with on my TBR shelves, even on my books that I've read, I'm sure I could come up with a handful more. But once I saw how big my piles were getting, I'm like, I better stop now or this video is going to be way too long. So I'm just going to dive in and tell you about first the books that I have read and then the books that I've not yet read that are on my shelves that could be read that I would recommend for AAPI Heritage Month. So the first author that I have is Thanh Lai. I have a middle grade and a young adult book by her. The middle grade is Inside Out and Back Again. This is about a Vietnamese girl who has to move to America with her family. It's a book written in verse. It's a very quick read, but it just addresses leaving Vietnam and what that feels like, and then coming to America, not speaking English as your first language, not speaking English very well at all, and how that impacts her and what is that like for her and her family. Such a great book. I really love this one. And then for Christmas this year, my Christmas book exchange, I received Butterfly Yellow, which is another Vietnamese American story about a girl who, during the Vietnam War, tries to escape with her baby brother, thinking that these people who say that they can find homes for children overseas, they only take the little brother and they leave her there in Vietnam. And then she has to go home and face her family, tell them what happened. So we get at the beginning of the book taking place in Vietnam. And actually throughout the book, we kind of go back and forth because she does eventually make her way to America to track down her baby brother and what happened to him and the family that he's now with, the trauma that she has to go through to even leave Vietnam in the first place. Do any of her family members come with her? All of that is addressed in this book. It was so good, and I really enjoy Thanh Lai's writing. I have quite a few middle grade on this list. The next one is The Night Diary by Veera Hiranandani. So this one takes place in India, right in 1947, when India is finally no longer a part of the British colonies. And it is divided now into two countries, Pakistan and India. And that dividing line especially revolves around the two religions, Hindu and Muslim. Tensions between these two religious groups really gets very high, and we follow one family who's kind of on the wrong side of that dividing line, and they need to try to escape or flee to the other side. So we're talking India, Pakistan, such a great book. This one is written in letter formats, or almost like diary, obviously, The Night Diary. I really enjoyed this one as well. Another book set in Pakistan that I enjoyed is Amal Unbound. This is by Aisha Saeed. And in this one, we follow a 12-year-old girl who mouths off to the wrong person in town and ends up becoming an adventured servant in the household of the wealthy family of her village. So this one talks a lot about class, and we follow Amal as she kind of had all these dreams for her life, and now that has been derailed a bit, and how does she react to that, and what does her family do, and all of that. So I enjoyed this one. And then there's a sequel to this one as well, Omar Rising. Omar is Amal's best friend, and so we follow his story in the sequel, which I have also read. I just don't own it. We follow a Chinese family here in America in Front Desk by Kelly Yang. Mia and her immigrant parents kind of run the front desk of this hotel/motel. The owner of the motel is not a very kind man, and Mia and her family end up using the motel as a place to hide immigrant families and provide for them, refugee families maybe. It's been a while since I've read this, but I remember really liking it, and it was way heavier than this cover represents. I like this cover. I think this is a super cute cover, but it's not a super cutesy kind of a book. It deals with some pretty serious issues, and I really loved the book. I just didn't think the cover and the book matched, but I do like the cover, and I liked the book, so it is what it is. Another book that's set in China is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin. She actually has a couple others that I did not put into my TBR pile that I own. Starry River of the Sky and When the Sea Turned to Silver. This one, though, I have read and really loved. We follow a young girl named Min Lee who leaves her family on this adventure to find the man in the moon, where she wants to try to change the fates of her family. Along the way, stories and folklore play a huge part in this story. Stories that her father told her as she was growing up, stories that she hears along the way. It is a wonderful, almost fairy tale like story focusing a lot on Chinese folklore, which I really loved. Khaled Hosseini is a fantastic author who writes about this part of the world, the Kite Runner, and I've read 1,000 Splendid Suns as well. And both of those take place in Afghanistan, and both are very serious. I kind of actually like 1,000 Splendid Suns a little better. I just couldn't find it today when I was looking for it. The Kite Runner follows a young boy growing up. It's almost a coming of age story. And it deals with class, and it starts right before the Russian takeover of Afghanistan. So there's a little bit of those political events, but also we follow this young boy and the choices that he makes that have devastating consequences moving forward for himself and others. Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet is set here in America. This is by Jamie Ford. We have dual timelines. So it's in 1986, but also during World War II, right after World War II, when Japanese in America were sent to internment camps. And so we follow a young Chinese boy and his best friend, who is a young Japanese girl, and how they get separated during that time period. And then years later, what becomes of them. At the center of it is this hotel where some Japanese families were able to store some of their belongings, or where belongings of these families were placed when they were sent away. I really love Jamie Ford, and I loved this book. It was very heartbreaking, very heartbreaking. Speaking of Japan, though, we traveled to Japan in Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. This reads like a memoir. It's not, though. And we follow the life of this young girl as she is with her family at the very beginning, and then how she is brought to the big city to become a geisha, and we learn about the geisha and their role and how they impacted society. There's also the kind of political drama within the geisha, and then this one romance that this young girl has or wants to have as well. I found the writing of this to be beautiful, and it was so intriguing, and just about a culture and a part of the world that I'm just not very familiar with. The Night Tiger by Yangtze Chu is a book that I read for the BookTube Prize a couple years ago, and then my brother actually gave it to me for Christmas. This one takes place in Malaysia, and we follow a young boy who is tasked to bury the finger of his master. He's a Chinese houseboy named Ren. He has to fulfill a promise that he made to his dead master to find the severed finger. Somehow he lost a finger, I don't remember how, and bury it with the rest of his body. Otherwise, his soul will have to wander the earth forever. And then we also follow Ji Lin, who is a young woman who is an apprentice dressmaker by day and a dancer by night in order to help pay off her mother's mahjong debts. And one night, one of her dance partners leaves behind a gruesome souvenir, and then that sends her into a dark adventure. And these two young people, their lives intertwine. There is a bit of magical realism or folklore in this as well. And I remember this being one of the few BookTube Prize books that I actually was invested in and really liked. So there's that one. The last two that I have read are among my favorites always. I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel since I've read it a few years ago. This is White Chrysanthemum by Mary Lynn Brocht. This one takes place in Korea and Japan. We follow these sisters at the beginning, and it's set during World War II. We follow these two sisters who are part of the Haenyeo, or the female divers in Korea. These two sisters are out diving with their mom one day when they see Japanese soldiers approaching. So the one sister swims to shore and tells the other to dive down. And so she is the one that is taken by Japanese soldiers. She's kidnapped. So we follow the lives of these two sisters, one who stays in Korea with her family and one who is forced to become a comfort woman in the front lines of the Japanese army. And I had never heard of comfort women before, and it was awful. And this is definitely a very hard-hitting book. I just found it to be so fascinating. I loved the writing, I loved the story, and I recommend it all the time. But do know, it is a very difficult read. And then I do have a nonfiction middle grade called All 13, The Incredible Cave Rescue of the Thai Boys Soccer Team. This is by Christina Soontorvad, and actually all of her books are set in Thai-inspired worlds. So a couple of them, A Wish in the Dark and The Last Map Maker, are fantasy, but they're inspired by Thai culture and Thai country, the country itself, Thailand. But this one is a nonfiction about the boys soccer team that got trapped in a cave and how do they get rescued, and how the whole world came around to this event and lent their support in finances and resources and people, how cave divers flew from England and other places to come. It is set up like a textbook. There are tons of pictures in here, and there are these sections that are just about the culture of Thailand and just different things about Buddhism and just information. Yeah, the spirits around us and how that plays a part in Thai culture, and then relates it all back to this event of the cave and why did the cave flood so quickly. Like, it's very informational, and it's right in the title. All 13 of them are going to get rescued. And yet I was on the edge of my seat. I could not stop reading because I just had to know how they were all going to get rescued. There is out now adaptations, a movie adaptation and also a documentary about this event. Both are fabulous. The movie did such a good job with casting. We see in the documentary the actual people, and I think the movie did a great job of casting for some of the divers and the other workers, but both are very good. But the book is the best. I loved it. And that is all the ones that I have read. And now we're going to move on to my stack of books that I have not yet read. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. A lighthearted mystery in the veins of Thursday Murder Club or Finley Donovan is Killing It. Follow an elderly Chinese woman who runs a tea shop in San Francisco's Chinatown. One day she comes down from her apartment to the tea shop and finds somebody murdered dead on her floor. She's convinced she's going to figure out who the murderer is based on who comes into her shop. So she starts paying much closer attention to her customers, gets to know her regulars, starts to kind of almost form a found family with them. And yet one of them is potentially the murderer. What? It just sounds really kind of delightful. I'm very excited to read that. I bought that on Independent Bookstore Day. One that just came in my book outlet box is Beyond Me by Annie Denwith Chikamatsu. This one takes place in 2011 in Japan, when in the early afternoon, 2:45 in the afternoon, there was an earthquake that shook Japan to its core. And then 10 minutes later, a massive tsunami. And it follows one young girl in the midst, 11-year-old Maya, in the midst of those natural disasters and what happens to her and her family. Holy moly, that sounds very interesting. In my quick perusal of my Newbery shelf, there are so many Newbery that take place in this part of the world. I actually just thought of When You Trap a Tiger as Korean folklore. I did not pull that one down, but I did grab two very old ones. Young Fu of the Upper Yangtze by Elizabeth Foreman Lewis. This one is going to take place right in China, 1920s Chongqing, rural farming area. I'm interested in that. And then also Shen of the Sea is going to be Chinese short stories for children by Arthur Bowie Chrisman. So both of those take place in China. I think I heard about this one on Currently Reading podcast. I don't remember. 50 Words for Rain by Asha Lemmy. I don't remember where I first heard about this, but it takes place in 1948 Kyoto, Japan. Do not question, do not fight, do not resist. An 8-year-old Noriko, that's her first lesson. She will not question why her mother abandoned her with only these final words. She will not fight her confinement to the attic of her grandparents' estate, and she will not resist the scalding chemical baths she receives daily to lighten her skin. What? I forgot about that. The child of a married Japanese aristocrat and her African-American GI lover. She's an outsider from birth. Her grandparents take her in only to conceal her, fearful of a stain on the royal pedigree that they are desperate to uphold in a changing Japan. Obedient to a fault, she accepts her solitary life, despite her natural intellect and curiosity. Crazy. I forgot that was what that was about. I need to read that. I believe this is another one about Korean female divers, The Island of Sea Women. Set on the island of Jeju, follows two girls from very different backgrounds as they begin working in the sea with their village's all-female diving collective. So we follow them over a few decades through the colonialism of the 1930s and 40s, World War II, the Korean War, and then the era of cell phones and wetsuits for women divers. And these two women and their friendship over the course of that time. Sounds really good. I have Girl in Translation by Jean Kwok. So in this one, we have a young girl and her mom who emigrate from Hong Kong to the United States, but they have a lot of debt and they don't speak English. And it's just talks about what that experience is like for them. And the daughter is very smart, and she decides to soak up this education and let that be a way that she's able to kind of help her and her mother. She embarks on a double life, it says, an exceptional student by day and a sweatshop worker by night. In time, she learns to translate not just her language, but herself, back and forth between two worlds, between hardship and triumph, heartbreak and love, and all that gets lost in translation. One of our middle grade March book club reads that we're going to be doing this year is Maisie Chen's Last Chance by Lisa Yi. This reminds me so much. This cover even just reminds me so much of Front Desk. The same kind of cutesy, but I have a feeling this one is going to be a heavier hitter too. Welcome to the Golden Palace. When Maisie visits her grandparents in Last Chance, Minnesota, she discovers that the restaurant her family owns is filled with secrets. She has lots of questions. Can she find the answers? I don't really know much more about it. I know a bunch of people read this during middle grade March and really loved it, and it did win quite a few awards that are on the cover here. So I'm looking forward to that one. Outrun the Moon by Stacey Lee, and she has a couple others as well. One that I really want to read is Luck of the Titanic, which is about a Chinese brother and sister who come to America on the Titanic. This one is in San Francisco, 1906. 15-year-old Mercy Wong, that's YA. 15-year-old Mercy Wong is determined to break from the poverty of Chinatown, and an education at St. Clair's School for Girls is her best hope. Then she just discovers the class system within her school and how difficult it is to fit in with the popular girls. But then we also have the earthquake, San Francisco earthquake, on the 18th of April. So historical backdrop, but also a school setting, and also a Chinese American trying to find a way to make America her home. Sounds really good. I have another Jamie Ford book, The Many Daughters of Ah Feng Moy. This is the Once Upon a Book Club edition, and I love it. I think it's such a beautiful edition. Look at the end papers of this. Oh my word, it's so stunning. This one's going to follow generations of Chinese women. In the present day, Dorothy is really struggling with mental health and severe depression. She's also a poet laureate, but then she starts to see some of these tendencies in her 5-year-old daughter as well. And they both, or one of them, begin remembering things from the lives of their ancestors. So then we get to see kind of some glimpses of the women from the Moy family from generations before. One of them was a nurse serving with the Flying Tigers. One of them was a student in England at a famous school with no rules. One of them was quarantined in San Francisco during a plague epidemic. One of them was a tech executive with a unique dating app. And then Ah Feng Moy was the first Chinese woman to set foot in America. So I think that's going to be a really emotional read, and I'm excited to read this because I do have treats to open along the way because I got the box of it from Once Upon a Book Club. Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. This is her most recent book. I have read Little Fires Everywhere, and I never can remember the name of the other one. I did like them, but I didn't love them. So I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about Our Missing Hearts. I have heard some good things about it already. This is a deeply suspenseful and heartrending novel about an unbreakable love between a mother and a child in a society consumed by fear. We're going to follow 12-year-old Bird, who lives with his loving but broken father, a former linguist who now shelves books at a library. Bird knows not to stand out, not to ask too many questions. For a decade, their lives have been governed by laws written to preserve American culture in the wake of years of economic instability and violence. To keep the peace and restore prosperity, the authorities are now allowed to relocate children of dissidents, especially those of Asian origin, and libraries have been forced to remove books seen as unpatriotic, including the work of Bird's mother, Margaret, a Chinese-American poet who left the family when he was 9 years old. It does sound like it's going to be a heavy-hitting, kind of emotional read, Our Missing Hearts. We'll see. Let me know if you've read any of these, actually. Then we have The Library of Legends by Jenny Chang. This one takes place in China in 1937, right at the beginning of World War II. Japanese bombs start falling on the city of Nanking, and 19-year-old Hu Lian and her classmates at Minghua University are ordered to flee. Lian and a convoy of students, faculty, and staff must walk 1,000 miles to safety a journey marred by the constant threat of aerial attack. And it's not just the refugees who are at risk. The group has been entrusted with a priceless treasure, a 500-year-old collection of myths and folklore known as the Library of Legends. Crazy and gorgeous cover. Holy moly. Sounds so good. Finally, one of my most recent Book of the Month choices is Independence, which is Three Sisters, Their Deep Bond, and the Struggle for India's Freedom by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Set during the partition of British India in 1947, this book brings to life the sweeping story of three sisters caught up in events beyond their control, their unbreakable bond, and the incredible struggle against powerful odds. Sounds really good, and I feel like it would be such a good book flight or like pair with this middle grade. The Night Diary is set around that same time. India's independence, India and Pakistan separating, all of the political drama and dangers. I mean, it wasn't just drama, like there was fighting and it was really difficult. But we follow Priya, who wants to be a doctor even though society frowns on it. Deepa, the beauty of the family, determined to make a marriage that will bring her family joy and status. And then Jamini, a devout, sharp-eyed, and talented quilt maker with deeper passions than she reveals. So I love stories about sisters and sibling groups and even adult stories about that. So I feel like this is going to be a really good one as well. So there you have it. There, if you are looking, if you are looking for a book with AAPI representation, these are it. There are so many here on my shelves, and I really love books about this part of the world, Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands. I mean, there's so many more countries not represented in this stack, but I think I have a pretty good, I mean, what did I have? Malaysia, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, Pakistan, India, Afghanistan. I think that's it. Thailand, Vietnam. I mean, that's pretty good. There's so many more countries that I don't have represented as well. But I would love to hear from you, especially if you've read any of the ones on my TBR stack, the ones that I haven't yet read. Let me know if you've enjoyed those. And also if you have any other AAPI authors that you would recommend or books that you would recommend, I would love to add to this collection. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this shelf spotlight. I look forward to talking with you in the comments down below about these books or the books that you're going to add to my list. And I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.